everyone, this is Alina. Thank you for joining in. So I'll just introduce myself briefly. I'm a clinical psychologist working with Shaka Khanum Cancer Memorial Hospital. And I've recently joined hands with EdWatch. The whole point of working on this project is to run this mental strength program, which is a capability and an opportunity for me to provide you with an outlet for all your feelings, emotions that you might be having while you're going through this pandemic. So we have come up with a project for you as a mental strength program that is good things are happening. And while I was coming up with this topic and I was thinking of something to come up with, this topic specifically clicked me because I wanted all of you to know that, while in the real world, good things might not be happening, but there is this possibility that we can create our own reality by thinking in a straight way, and I'm thinking good thoughts. So let's just start with it. We have this presentation for you, so this is easier for you to follow. By good things, what do I mean and how do we make them happen? Let's just go through it. So before we see what good things and how can we make them happen, we have to understand the mind-body connection that is there in every one of us, and we have to understand why do we feel a certain way and how can we fix that. For that to understand, let's just look at this first. Our whole existence is based on three things, three components that all of us have. Those are mind, body, and soul. So how do we define mind? Mind is basically something, in which thoughts come and which does all the work for you. Let's just call it an ingredient to the recipe that you want to create, right? Body is the outlet in which all your thoughts and all your actions project. So how do we call it? What do we call it? If mind is the ingredient to your recipe, body is basically that dish that we wanted to create. Now, what is soul? For most people, soul is a spiritual element, but I would like to define it as an emotional or intellectual capability. It is basically an essence, like most people say that this piece of art or this movie or this song is lacking soul. So what do we mean by that when we actually say that? What we mean to say is that this little something is lacking some essence. This is the aura of a thing. So aura or essence, and what how we define ourselves. So when all these three things are connected, so if one of them is not working in the right way, it impacts the other one, and then that thing impacts the other one. So it's a vicious cycle, and it keeps going and going and going. So let's just move forward with it. Okay, so the whole point of this good thing happening project is that you need to understand that our body, our mind, and our soul are connected. There are a lot of researches which support the fact that how we feel, it impacts our body, and how we go about our body impacts our feeling. There is this hormone called serotonin, which is released when we're really happy, when we're thinking positive thoughts, when we're in a good mood, when we're doing activities which are good for our health. So low mood and negative thoughts, when we have them, they basically reduce the level of serotonin in our body. And so does they reduce the level of dopamine, right? Think of it as when you're having a really bad day, when you're really tired, you don't want to do something good. You don't want to do anything that requires physical exertion or that requires you being in a good mood. So when you're really tired, you don't want to actually do anything at all. That is because your body is not going in flow with your mind. So in a similar way, when you're happy, you're really excited and you are really energetic, and you would actually start doing a lot of things. People will ask you to do this and that and that. That is why we say the happiest people are the more energetic one, because when they're happy, their bodies are going in flow with their emotions. So this is to say that when you're feeling happy, your body is creating more of those hormones, and those hormones are basically impacting your body in a very productive way. It has a good impact on your body. So I work with cancer patients, and I always try to tell them that if they have their hopes up high, and if they are having good thoughts, if they're being resilient, that no, I'm going to fight this illness, and I'm stronger than this illness. So what happens is that the medication that they're having, it starts benefiting them in a quicker way. And if they're they lose hope, or they're having more negative thoughts than the positive ones, then this is a very common impact that we can notice in them, that their prognosis is their prognosis goes towards the downside. So there is this connection that is obvious, and we need to understand that. And for that, I have this research that I would like to share with you all. There was this research done in which scientists showed a group of people cartoons, right? And while they were doing that, they made two groups. One of the groups had a pencil clenched in their mouths, so they had this forced smiling facial expression. So what happened, and the other group did not have any pencil clenched inside their mouths. So what happened was that they came up with this analysis that the people who were having this forced smile impression on their face, they enjoyed the cartoons twice more than the people in other group. The reason for that is that when you're in a body position that goes more in line with the emotion, that emotion starts actually projecting inside you, right? For instance, just to prove that thought, we can do a little experiment. I want all of you to think of a bad incident, maybe like, not doing a presentation good, or maybe having a fight with your friend or family member, anything. And while you're thinking of that incident, I would want you all to drop your shoulders and, make a really sad face and be very down. So just try it for a moment. Think of that emotion and that incident, how you felt. Drop your shoulders, make a little sad face, and reflect for a moment how you're thinking about that, how you're feeling about it. And now think of that same incident, but change your body posture. Do it a victory sign like this. Be very confident, put a smile on your face, erect your shoulders, keep doing it for a while, and now keep thinking about that incident. I hope you do notice a difference. The whole point of this experiment was to let you all know and realize that our bodies, they influence our mind. And the thoughts that we're having in our mind, they influence our body postures. So next time when you're feeling sad, instead of sitting in your room, closing all the lights and doing things that does not make you happy at all, why don't you just start doing something that you previously used to like doing? I know you will have to force yourself, and but eventually within 5 or 10 minutes you're going to notice that you would start enjoying that task in comparison to what you were thinking. You wouldn't want to do this at all. So the whole point of this thought mood connection is to let you know that our mind is this thing that needs all the convincing. We can do absolutely anything in the entire world. Following on the same example that we used before, you can cook any recipe in the entire world, providing that you have the right ingredients and you know how to do that. And of course, if you're willing to do that. So I have this very interesting experiment that I did for you all. Our thoughts have physical energy. Have you ever noticed that sometimes when somebody is staring at you, and you start feeling uncomfortable all of a sudden, or sometimes you're doing your own work and you're immersed in your own work and you're not focusing on what other people are talking about you or talking at all. But all of a sudden you hear something or maybe your name, and then you start focusing your attention over there. So what happens is that their energy is projecting on you. See, so their thoughts are projecting on you. Their thoughts have energy, and those energies are reaching to you. So thoughts do have physical energies, and to prove that, we have a video, and which we made for you, of course, with the help of a friend. So I would really want all of you to see that video and be amazed about it. So we're gonna start with that
Hi
video.
everyone, this is Dishan.
So we're gonna do this little experiment today just to see if our thoughts have physical energy. So let's just begin with it. Okay, Zishan, can you see this hanging object?
Yeah.
Is it moving?
No.
Is my hand moving?
No.
Okay, so you have to think of a negative thought. Is it there in your mind?
Yeah.
Okay, so focus that thought on this eraser. Put that thought on this eraser. And now with all your energy, focus on this eraser and think that this eraser has started moving back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Put the energy of that thought on this eraser and keep moving it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Is my hand moving?
No.
Okay, focus back on the eraser, back and forth, that thought in your mind and on this eraser as well. Now, make the eraser move in an anti-clockwise position with that thought in your mind. Focus all the energy of that thought on this eraser and keep moving it in an anti-clockwise direction. Your thought is really strong. Now, can you start moving it again in a back and forth position? Okay. Now focus that thought again on that eraser and start moving it in a clockwise direction. So, I hope all of you were amazed. I wasn't actually moving my hand. I want all of you to try this. Just take any object and tie it with a thread and start just holding it in front of a friend or a family member and then ask them to come up with a positive or negative thought and keep projecting it on that object and tell them a direction that the thread is moving in that direction and it will actually start moving in that direction. So the whole point of that experiment was to see if thoughts have physical energy, and of course they have. There have been various experiments in which many scientists who were interested in planting, what they did was they planted two seeds, and some of them what they did was that they would every day they would talk to one plant and they wouldn't talk to the other one, and all the other conditions were same. The extraneous variables were controlled, everything was same, they were getting the same amount of water, sunlight, everything. But the plant that was being talked to, it grew out to be an amazing plant with a lot of flowers, and it happened to be growing faster than the other one. So from that, they concluded that our thoughts, they have energy. Our negative thoughts, they have certain energy, and positive ones, they have way more energy than the negative ones. Like lights have wavelengths, or thoughts have different kind of energies as well. There was this another experiment in which there was this glass of water placed in front of the scientist, and what he used to do was he used to say different words to that water, and he would measure certain things about water. I don't know, I'm not a scientist, but he would measure certain things and he would see that the chemical composition and the structure of the water would somehow be altered with every word uttered to it. So all of those experiments prove that our thoughts have physical energy. This is how, about what people say, positive vibes, negative vibes. Now, what are these vibes? These vibes are basically our energy of the thoughts. So this is to say that when you're thinking a negative thought, it's not just a thought, you're projecting your negative energies into the atmosphere and more importantly, onto your own self. So if your thoughts are that powerful that, they can heat up the environment or throw their projection onto other people, why can't we use these thoughts in a productive and positive way? Why can't we, something that is so involuntary and something that has so much power over everything, why can't we make it as an ability of ours to go in the right direction? So now that we know that thoughts really impact everything, and they have this huge impact on everything that we do and everything that happens, we have to understand that these negative thinking patterns are basically something that are holding us down, and we have to learn a way to be productive and shift the pattern of those negative thoughts. So how can we do that? There is this one simple technique called vertical arrow that is basically used for finding out the underlying thoughts that all of us have, which stops us from being productive. But before going on to that technique, let's just see what are those thoughts that holds us down. Those thoughts are basically called silent assumptions. Silent assumptions are something that you hold about yourself, about your future, about your past, about your philosophy of life, how you base your entire belief system, self-esteem, everything on. See, so this is this basic thought that you have about yourself. So if I ask you, what thought do you have about yourself? What is your silent assumption? What is your funda of life? What would you say? You would probably come out with something like live and let live, be happy, make people happy. But those are not really thoughts, right? Uh, these silent assumptions are difficult to evaluate and find out about if we just think about them in a straight way. Let's just find out our silent assumptions. Very difficult task. But there is this technique which requires asking yourself a lot of questions, and by doing that, you can come down to the core of your thoughts. And basically, the assumptions that you hold about yourself, they drive your mood and the consequent behaviors that you indulge in. So if your silent assumptions are good about yourself, you're gonna have a good mood and consequent good behavior, and you're gonna be content with yourself. But let's just say that you hold very negative thoughts about yourself. You see yourself as a person who is not successful, who is not worthy of things or worthy to be valued. So these silent assumptions are something that are gonna project into everything that you do and every thought that you're gonna have. So let's just see how we can come up with questions that can evaluate a thought and reach to the core of it and evaluate the core of it and evaluate the grain of truth in it. So these are a few questions that you can come up with. For instance, let's just come up with an example for making it a little bit of easier for you. Let's just come up with a situation. What could be that situation be? I had a fight with my friend, right? So I might be thinking that friend of mine is really selfish. Okay, so I need to ask myself this question. If this thought is true, why would it mean so much to me? Why would it upset me? Okay, let me try to come up with an answer. Okay, if my friend is selfish, that means she doesn't value me, maybe? Okay, so, okay, now turning on to that psychologist mode of mine. So, if my friend doesn't value me, why does it upset me? Okay, now the client mode. Uh, if she doesn't value me, maybe that means I'm not useful for her, maybe, or she doesn't care about me that much as I do for her. And yeah, I'm not valuable to her. I'm a useless person to her. Okay, if I'm a useless person for her, why does it upset me that much? Why would it be so bad if I'm a useless person to somebody? Well, that would mean that I have no purpose in life, and maybe if I don't add value to anyone's life, I probably shouldn't live. See, so this is the core of the problem. If I don't add value to another person's life, that means that I have no right to live. See, so the first thought was that my friend is a really selfish person because I've had a fight with her, and the core, the grain of truth came out to be, if I don't add value to another person's life, I shouldn't probably be living. So these two things are existing on the opposite ends of a continuum. But did you see the process, how we went from one to another? There is this one tip I would want to give you all when you're asking yourself certain questions while coming at those core beliefs. Uh, when you're answering, you have to answer about the thought, not about how you feel. For instance, if I ask you, okay, if this thought is true, why would it be so bad? Why would it upset you? So the answer shouldn't be like, it would upset me because I would feel miserable or terrible or anything, because that's a feeling and you can justify a feeling. Feeling comes from thoughts. And if I say कि, it would upset me because not achieving something makes me feel I am not a capable person, perhaps that's right. Because that's not an emotion, that's not a feeling, that's a thought which is making me feel in a certain way. So I have another example for all of you in which we are gonna see how to do this vertical arrow technique exactly. So for an example, I have used this very common complaint that a lot of people are having these days because of this whole quarantine situation. A lot of people are stuck inside homes, and while the word has it that families are coming really close to each other, I see a lot of people who are getting frustrated and they are fighting like crazy. So this is something a lot of clients have been complaining about. So the problem or thought is that my family doesn't love me because I've had a fight with them, and my father or my brother or my mother doesn't ask me about anything. They don't ask me how my day went by. They don't see my problems, something like that. So I would ask them, okay, if your family doesn't love you, why does it upset you? And the answers are in black, and the red ones are the questions that I would be asking them again and again. So the answer would be that means I'm not a valuable person to them, maybe. Okay, why does it hurt so much? Why does it upset you that much? What it means to you? Maybe I'm a useless person. Okay, you're a useless person. Let's just assume that. So being a useless person, how does it impact you? What does it mean to you? I will be a loser person. Okay, if you're a loser person, why would it upset you so much? Then again, the person would come up with something like, it makes me feel embarrassed. And why would it be so bad if you feel embarrassed? And maybe it means that I am a one big mistake and probably should not be alive. So a person who's having this thought that I am one big mistake, this thought is going to project in every attitude of his and every thought of his. That person would be very cautious while doing his work, would be overly obsessed with not making mistake, would might actually turn out to be a perfectionist or an OCD person, and would beat himself self up if he makes even a very small mistake. See, so this thought that our family doesn't love me, and this core belief that came out, this silent assumption that came out that I'm a one big mistake and I shouldn't be alive if I'm a mistake. These two things were two entirely different things. But did you see how this one specific thought led us to the grain of truth that we were having these thoughts about? So these thoughts, these core beliefs are the ones that we need to work on, not on the surface level thoughts, right? There was this client of mine once who had social phobia, and he used to hold a belief that making a mistake would mean that other people will make fun of him. So what we did with him, actually we'll discuss it later, that will be more fun. So remember that example. But you need to come out with these core beliefs. You need to understand these values, and these core beliefs, these faulty values are holding you down, and these are the walls that you're building up, which is stopping your progress. So up next we have this thing. So now that you have understood that thoughts are something that are making everything happen for you, thoughts are something that is forming your reality for you, how do we shift this pattern of thinking? How do we go from thinking to thinking positive? Because during this whole situation, everyone has been frustrated, everyone's been having problems. We are not able to do a lot of things that we were previously doing, especially the ladies who were housewives. It's still the same kind of routine for them, but now that everyone is at home, so they're having a lot of workload on them, and they are the people who are having a lot of problems because everyone's at home, a lot of expectations their way. So I'm coming out with this specific example because I have seen a lot of people go through this problem during this time, and I had a lot of complaints about it from different kind of people. So there are two things which are very common during this situation: problems and mistakes. So let's just talk about two of them. if you're having a minor inconvenience in your daily life, if you're having a problem, let's say you've lost your job, how do you turn this problem into something that doesn't bother you and doesn't stop your progress? Obviously, having a job does not define you, right? Your values define you and your belief system define you. So rather than thinking of this as a problem, of course, this is a problem because you need to put your meal on the table, you need to support your family maybe, and you need to be self-sufficient. So I do understand. I'm absolutely not calling your problems non-problems. I'm just saying that I know they are problems, but you need to find out a way to shift your focus. Rather than calling them problems, you need to call them opportunities for coming up with solutions and putting your ideas into actions. Why? Because our brains develop habits, right? Uh, how do we define that? For instance, people who smoke cigarettes. Have you ever noticed that smokers tend to smoke a lot when they're under stress as compared to when they're in a happy mood? Why do they do that? Because when they smoke, in their body, endorphins are released. And endorphins are basically something that stops the pain and reduces the level of stress. See? So when they smoke, their unconscious mind, the other mind that we have that we cannot see, uh, makes it into a habit that this specific act helps in reduction of stress. That mind doesn't know that smoking is injurious to health. A public service message though, but the mind doesn't know that it's injurious, but it makes a habit out of it, right? So next time you're gonna be stressed, your mind is directly going to target you towards smoking. So that's why people smoke. They make a habit out of it. So our brains are wired to make habits, but you cannot break those habits just by talking back to your mind. What you have to do is you do have to talk back to your mind, but you need to talk it back while being in that exact same situation. So the example that we discussed before of one of my clients who had social phobia, this person had this thought that making mistakes would make other people make fun of him. He would feel really embarrassed, and other people will start making fun of him. So what we did with him was that we both mutually agreed on a behavioral experiment. What we did was we converted money into coins, and we decided that in front of a lot of people he would drop a lot of coins and he would just act that as if he did it by a mistake. So he did that, and we had our little assumptions written down on a piece of paper before doing that behavioral experiment. And those assumptions were mainly written by that client of mine. I hope he's not listening. Um so what he wrote was that people are gonna make fun of me and I will be embarrassed, and people are actually gonna laugh at him and call him stupid. What actually happened was that people started helping him out to pick up those coins. So he didn't just talk back to his mind that no, this is not going to happen, no, this is not going to happen. He actually went inside that situation, he practiced it, and then he came up with this idea, okay, no, my assumptions were not proved true. So what you have to do is, if you're having a problem, view it as an opportunity in which you can practice your solution, put your ideas into action, and actually do something about it. So, if you have lost your job recently, I know this is a problem for you, but how can you paraphrase it? How can you shift your focus? What you can come up with, if I were you, I would probably come up with something like this. Okay, I've lost my job. I know I need to find a new one, but this is an opportunity for me to try out new ventures and see where my capabilities can take me. For mistakes, a lot of people think that making mistakes is so bad and it will make other people think that they're not capable, they're stupid, and they didn't know how to do it. But how can we, and this is actually true for a few people. Why? Because other people behave in a certain way that makes us feel that okay, we have made a very big mistake. So how can we paraphrase it? How can we view it into something productive? We can view mistakes as something that increases our opportunity to tolerate difficult situation. It can build in us resilience, because if you're not going through something, if you're not making mistakes, you're never gonna learn. There is absolutely nothing in this world which you can master in a day without making mistakes or without practicing. So while you're practicing at something, that means you're improving. So mistakes are basically only practice. If you make a mistake, that means that next time you would be able to understand that this is something that I did previously and it didn't work out. So now I have got to try it in a different way. So it is improving your behavior. It is making you capable of having gratification, and it is basically an opportunity for increasing your resilience and level of tolerance. Try that sometime. So, and if nothing works out for you, then there is this very little thing that I do with my clients. What I ask them to do is I ask them to come up with a problem and view it uh, in comparison to the entire world. What happens is that they tend to start viewing their problem in a very different way. So this is the world map. This is the place that all of us live in, and where this cross is, this is where we live right now. This is Pakistan. So if I'm having a problem, I would imagine myself in this map, and I would see myself at this cross with my, and that thought is very little, right, in comparison to myself. So even though I'm really, really, really small in front of the whole world, that thought of mine is even smaller. So when I come to see my problem in comparison to the whole world, I, rather than overgeneralizing my problem, I minimize it. What's different for me is that rather than comparing myself to the entire world, I tend to see myself in front of the whole universe, look at the stars, and see this universe is so big and my problem is so little, and that actually works out for me. So you can try this and see if it works out for you. You have got to have a toolkit for yourself, whatever works best for you, and then come up with something, that practice, and then come up with something that really works for you. So now that we have seen how to get to the core of our belief systems, or how to start viewing problems and mistakes in a different way, now let's just see how can we actually shift the thinking patterns. There are a few techniques. They are really helpful. Like I said, you need to have a toolkit for yourself. So this is basically your toolkit and any other thing that works best for you. The number one thing is turning the inner light to self-reflect. What do we mean by self-reflection? Self-reflection is basically even though that we are in a troubled time, even while we're in a problem, you need to understand why you're feeling a certain way. For instance, somebody did wrong to you, or you had an angry outburst at somebody. Even though it might not be your mistake, it might not be you who did wrong, but you did come up with this reaction, right? So you need to understand, why did I feel this certain way? You have to be the psychologist of yourself. You have to self-analyze yourself. Why did I feel this way? Okay, the other person did wrong to me, but why did I feel this way? Because obviously there were a little expectations involved, and other person didn't meet those expectations, or probably you did something wrong with somebody else. So you need to, even if you don't want to say sorry, or if you don't want another person to apologize to you, you just need to understand why you felt in a certain way. And not just that, you need to acknowledge the thinking patterns as well. For those of you who have difficulty in coming up with positive thoughts, or who comes up with more negative thoughts, what you can do is you can keep a counter, and you can count every single time you come up with a positive thought. Obviously, for the first few days, they're going to be very less, but as you build on that habit, the number is going to increase. So what we can do is we can keep a counter, and we can do two things. One thing would be, you come up with a positive thought, and every single time you come up with a positive thought, you make a count. And another thing would be, for those people who have a lot of negative thoughts, when you have a negative thought, try to replace it with a positive one. Remember, we talked about our thoughts have physical energy. So if you're thinking a negative thought, that means you're projecting negative thinking energy onto yourself and onto other people. So if you instantly, you replace that thought with a positive one, that will instill positive energy in yourself, right? So every single time you have a negative thought, replace it with a positive one. And every time you are able to replace it with a positive thought, keep a count. And the other thing would be achievement jar. How I do it is you can take a jam jar or any jar that you have at your availability. Just write achievement jar over it, and every single day, maybe even if it's a very little achievement, write it on a piece of paper and put it in a jar. Make it a habit that every day you have to put at least one chit in it. And achievement could be something as little as having your breakfast on time if you're in a habit of running late every day, or eating healthy, not eating junk food in a day, not smoking for a day, or making up for something that you did, or talking to a friend maybe that you have lost touch with. So, you don't have to come up with really big achievements to feel good about yourself. Achievement could be something that little. Activity scheduling. Activity scheduling is basically for those people who have been stuck inside homes or have been too busy maybe, but they have tried to do something and they are unable to do it. So activity scheduling is basically a way of planning your day ahead, and that doesn't necessarily have to go with time. You just need to plan out that these are the activities that I'm going to do tomorrow. If you have been lagging behind on reading a book or finishing a project or doing something, you can actually plan your day ahead. Like how I do it is, if I have a lot of work piling up for myself, I try to plan my day. I need to I divide the work and I designate a little work on each day. Today I'm gonna do this. Tomorrow I'm gonna follow up on this task, and day after tomorrow I'm gonna follow up on that. So that really helps for people who are not having a structure of day. This is to give your day a structure, because when you're lacking structure, your mind wanders off to places you don't want your mind to go to. And a point that will support this idea is that have you ever noticed that on television, whenever we're watching something, whenever we're watching a movie or a drama, let's say, uh, when the advertisement come, there are a lot of different things happening in those 10 minutes. Different ads coming up. Once, in a minute it's just ice cream ad, and the next moment it's a mobile phone ad. So our minds are in a habit of clicking things really quickly. See, so that is why when you're sitting idle, when you don't have a structure of the day, your mind wanders off it, because it wants new things every instantly. So rather than making your mind wander off to places you don't want it to go to, structure your day, make it busy, get your distractibility so that you can be productive. And distractibility for being productive, and distractibility for from those wandering off episodes, not from being productive. Relaxation exercises. Relaxation exercises are something that can really be effective when you're having a stressful day, or you're just really tired. What you can do for a relaxation technique is that keep one hand over here and one hand over your belly, and like a fat person sleeps while laying down, try to take a deep breath in, and then inhale from your nose and exhale from your mouth in a very relaxed way, like this. So I didn't raise my shoulders. I didn't do anything. You guys probably couldn't tell if I was having a deep, relaxed breath. But with every inhale, try to imagine, try to understand that, maybe all the positive energies in the room are flowing in. And with every exhale, your whole negative energy, your tiredness, and, the frustration that you've had the entire day inside you is going out. And like energy can never be destroyed, it can only be converted into something else. Maybe it will get converted into heat and it will flow away. See, so it's all about thinking. Thinking matters, and right thoughts matter a lot. Thinking from an alternate angle. So this is basically thinking out of the box, out of the tunnel vision. Sometimes when we are so bound to keep on doing, when we are, really bound of doing one thing in a similar way, we lose creativity. So what we can do is, if you've been doing something for so long in one way, try to do it in another way. If you're foreign, again, like I'm hungry right now, I'm sorry if I'm coming up with too many food examples, but if you've been cooking one meal in a very specific way for a while, try the same recipe in a different way, or maybe a different recipe from somebody else. So doing that gives your mind creativity, and it again gives your mind a distractibility. and it makes you habitual of thinking out of the box. So if you make it out, if you make a habit out of it, so what's going to happen is when you have a problem, you won't be thinking in that exact rigid pattern of yours that you've been using for a while. Penny for a thought. Reward and punishment. What it means is that uh, give yourself motivation. How can you do that? If you've been meaning to shed some weight, for instance, and if you've decided that you would want to diet or do exercise every day, and if you've been lagging behind those goals of yours, so set specific goals for a day. Like, for instance, if I didn't eat chocolate for a day, if I don't eat chocolate for a day, I would reward myself with something that I would really want to eat after 2 days. So, see, so for 2 days, you would have to avoid eating chocolate or junk food, and at the third day, you can reward yourself. So that way, you can actually make your goals, and you're basically bribing your mind, and mind really follows bribing. Getting started. What do we mean by getting started? Is that all of us have this very lazy souls inside ourselves, and all of us, literally, all of us have been lagging behind on a few things. For me, it might be a project. For you, it might be reading a book, for instance, something like that. So we basically saying is not believing, right? So we keep saying something and we don't believe in it, we don't start doing it. So this is your time while you're stuck during this pandemic. This is your time to follow up and start doing things that you've been meaning to do for a while, and that you've lost touch with for a while. uh, I would really want you to try few of these techniques. They really help, and I want all of you to understand that thinking has a lot more power than we think it has. It's the thinking, that's worth a thousand deeds. And I know by what do I mean by good things are happening? I know no good things are happening outside in the real world probably right now, but you can make your own reality. You can create it by yourself just by thinking the right thoughts. So whenever you have a negative thought, whenever you're um, going through a rough patch, start thinking in a positive way. Shift that negative thinking pattern, because you're thinking, your mind is basically that space, which is going to initiate every positive thing that's going to happen for you. So thank you for joining in, and that's all. I'll just go over your comments and see if any one of you have any questions, and I'll try to answer those questions. Okay, there's this one really interesting comment that I would like all of you to listen to. The fact that I'm really watching this instead of studying, does this mean that I'm not thinking productively? Of course, you're thinking productively. You're thinking out of the box. You were bored of reading, and now you've started listening to it, and that's not a bad thing. Why? Because you have learned something. I hope you have learned something out of it. Can we control our emotions? Of course, we can control our emotions, but I don't want you to control your emotions. Why? Let's just see what do I mean by it. Try not to think about the pink elephant. So, how many of you actually didn't think about the pink elephant? No one, I suppose. So this is what happens when you try to control something, when you try to control a thought, or stop yourself from thinking something, doing something. So you don't need to control your emotions. You just need to put them out in a productive way. And there are a lot of productive ways. For instance, if I'll give you an example of a behavior rather than an emotion. For people who smoke a lot, I'm just following up on the previously followed example. People who smoke. Why do they smoke? Because smoking releases endorphins, and endorphins reduces stress. So if you want to quit smoking, there are a lot of different ways which releases endorphins. For instance, exercise, sitting outside in nature, doing a physical exertion, meeting your loved ones, hugging the one you love, actually releases oxytocin in your body. So there are a lot of things which releases those neurotransmitters and hormones which elevate your mood. So you don't need to control your emotion. You just need to put them out in a constructive way and do something that makes you feel good about it. Okay, let's just see some other comments. How can we control our negative thoughts? Again, we don't want you to control your negative thoughts. We only want that whenever a negative thought comes in, you should be able to replace it with an alternate one. For instance, if I'm having a negative thought, okay, uh, I wasted myself. The time that I've spent with my friend laughing, I could have used it to study. This is a negative thought, right? So how can we shift it into a positive one? Yeah, I know, right? I maybe wasted my time. I could have used it as studying time, but that's the time I spent laughing. It made me feel good about myself, and it elevated my mood. So I didn't waste it. I just didn't use it the right way. See, so you can actually shift the negative thinking pattern. If you are deceived by a friend, how to again control to make friends, how to gain confidence. Okay, there are two questions in one comment. If you are deceived by a friend, how to gain confidence to make new friends. See, we are making generalization over here. Overgeneralization is basically or maximizing your problem is something which hinders our progress, which hinders us from productive behaviors. Of course, this one friend of yours deceived you, but do you have just one friend? No, you have a lot of friends maybe, and you might as well come in contact with a lot of people every day who eventually might turn out to be your friend, a few of them. So not everyone is alike. One person may be in a certain way, but that doesn't mean that other people will turn out to be the same way. So I am seeing overgeneralization over there, not a negative thought. So you need to understand that overgeneralization means that we see one incident and we keep projecting it over and over and over and over again. It's like I failing an exam and thinking that I would fail every time. Is that possible? No, of course not. I can fail once or twice, but that doesn't mean that I will fail every time I take on an exam. So if one friend deceived you, that doesn't mean that everyone is going to do the same thing. And even if it was true for you, there are other people who get deceived by friends, but they still do have a lot of other friends, right? So this particular generalization is not a universal truth. And what's not a universal truth, you don't have to believe in the entirety of that thought because that's not provable. How to gain confidence. We have this whole program for it, assertiveness training, and that is a program that helps you gain confidence, practice those situations. Again, like I said before, you don't need to talk back to your brain only. That no, I'm going to do this. I'm stronger than this. I'm going to fight this situation. You have to actually go into that situation and then talk back to your mind. So what can we can do for gaining confidence would be, role play, role reversals. We can practice in front of the mirror, like most people in universities do. They when they have a presentation, I used to do that. When I used to have a presentation, I would rehearse in front of the mirror because rehearsing in front of yourself is way more difficult than rehearsing in front of other people. Try that someday. So we can gain confidence by doing a lot of things, but that would be out of the scope of this presentation. That would require an entirely different program. Okay, so that's all, everyone. Thank you for joining in. Thank you for bearing up with me. I hope I made you learn something and use these techniques and be productive about it. So I'm just gonna go offline now. We'll see each other again, inshallah. Bye.